I mean, come on. I'm glad you're doing good, but let's not do too good. We're in treatment. Things can get better.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to do chapter 2. We did the doctor's opinion the other day. We're going to do chapter 2. Who's going to read for me?
I'll read.
You're going to read? Yes, Jacob, you're the man. But listen to me. There's a lot of stuff in this chapter, a lot of stuff to talk about. So I'm going to talk. I'd like for you to talk too. If there's anything in here, yes, please. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in here because, like I was talking to Cullen before, and Cullen literally, I don't know if it's, I'm not 100% positive it's in this chapter, it's either in chapter 2 or chapter 3, but Cullen said it before, like, you know, switch from the hard stuff to beer, or just, you know, stop my drink. You know what I mean? It's like the stuff that we all do to try to control it, and why are we trying to control it when we know we really shouldn't? Because we don't want to say goodbye to this thing.
Right.
All right, so go ahead, my friend.
All right, chapter 2, there is a solution. We of Alcoholics Anonymous know thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill. Nearly all have recovered. They have solved the drink problem. We are average Americans. All sections of this country and many of its occupants are represented, as well as many political, economic, social, and religious backgrounds.
Isn't that just like any treatment center? You know what I mean? We're all from different races and colors and creeds and job and whatever. Go ahead.
We are people who would normally not mix, but there exists among us a fellowship, a friendliness, and an understanding which is indescribably wonderful. We are like the passengers of a great liner, the moment after rescue from shipwreck, when camaraderie, joyness, and democracy pervade the vessel from steerage to captain's table. Unlike the feelings of the ship's passengers, however, our joy and escape from disaster does not subside as we go on our individual ways. The feeling of having shared in a common peril is one element in the powerful cement which binds us, but that in itself would never have held us together as we are now joined. The tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. This is the great news this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism. An illness of this sort, and we have come to believe that it is an illness.
Hold on. So, anybody in here not believe it's an illness? Especially what Amy talked before about the disease and the science behind it? Anybody in? What?
This is a definitely.
Well, you're not even exaggerating. It really kind of is.
No, I'm
like,
serious.
yeah. Like this disease, by definition, is progressive, incurable, and fatal.
Yeah.
Fatal. That's, yeah. No. I'm glad you said that because it's really true. A lot of times, it doesn't really sink in. It didn't sink in for me when I was in treatment. Yet nobody really explained it to me like this. But it didn't sink into me in treatment because I guess I would have agreed with you that it's a disease because my insurance company wouldn't be paying for it. But I didn't know the science behind it. I didn't know I had no idea. It wasn't until I got out and I started Googling this stuff that I really learned about it. But do you believe that you have a disease? Like, have you accepted that? Have you accepted the fact that you are powerless over drugs or alcohol, whatever your thing is, whether you're strung out or not? You can have 3, 6, 9 months, a year sober, and if you're not working the steps, if you haven't gotten the cycle changed, you're as powerless as when you're sitting in this room. You really, I mean, it should humble you a little bit. It should, it really should change the way you look at it a little bit. Because here's the thing about this disease, unlike cancer. This is a disease that tells you you don't have a disease. This disease, after we have 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months clean, you start thinking, man, it wasn't that bad. I might handle it a little bit. Man, I just stopped for 2 months. I can stop. You know what I mean? I could do it once and stop. Does that not, Brent, is that not how our brain works?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we'll do that shit over and over. Go ahead.
An illness of this sort, and we have come to believe it is an illness, involves those about us in a way no other human sickness can. If a person has cancer, all are sorry for him and no one is angry or hurt.
Is that true?
Yes.
Is that, well, so why is the stigma with this illness or disease?
Not everyone believes it's a disease.
Exactly. I mean, listen, even people that want to understand, you know what I mean? Even people that try to understand don't really understand. You know what I mean? They really don't. They think, well, if you don't want to, like, seriously, what would your wife
Why can't you just stop?
Why can't you just stop? Just don't drink. Or people will tell you that just don't drink so much.
Yeah.
Well, shit, if I could do that, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, but they don't know.
I wouldn't have gotten drunk this morning.
Yeah, well, and he's going to read it in the next couple of lines. There is a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of misconceptions about drug addiction or alcoholism, and there really is still a stigma out there. It really is. I mean, it's changed a lot, especially since this book was written, but it still exists. Go ahead.
But not so with the alcoholic illness, for with it there goes annihilation of all things worthwhile in life. It engulfs all those all whose lives touch the sufferers. It brings misunderstanding, fierce resentment, financial insecurity, disgusted friends and employers, warped lives of blameless children, sad wives and parents. Anyone can increase the list. We hope this volume will inform and comfort those who are or who may be affected. There are many. Highly competent psychiatrists who have dealt with us have found it sometimes impossible to persuade an alcoholic to discuss his situation without reserve. Strangely enough, wives, parents, and intimate friends usually find us even more unapproachable than do the psychiatrist or the doctor. But the ex-problem drinker who has found this solution, who is properly armed with facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. Until such understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. That the man who is making the approach has had the same difficulty, that he obviously knows what he is talking about, that his whole deportment shouts at the new prospect that he is a man with a real answer, that he has no attitude of holier than thou, nothing whatever except the sincere desire to be helpful, that there are no fees to pay, no axes to grind, no people to please, no lectures to be endured. These are the conditions we have found most effective. After such an approach, many take up their beds and walk again. Next. Somebody else wants to read.
Anybody
Come
else?
on, Margaret.
Okay, go ahead.
None of us, I'll do my best. None of us makes a sole vacation of this work.
Vocation.
Vocation.
Nobody makes a sole job of this.
Nor do we think its effectiveness would be increased if we did. We feel the elimination of our drinking is but a beginning. A much more important demonstration of our principles lies before us.
So when it just said that, we feel like the elimination of our drinking is just the beginning. What did that just say?
This is part of your journey.
Which is what?
More to do to cover it.
Step
Well,
one.
yeah.
Step one. Don't I tell you this, guys? Don't I say this all the time? If alcohol was your real problem, once you stop drinking, everything would be fine. You know what I mean? And when it talks about the 12 steps, there's 12 steps. 12 steps. Only one step has anything to do with alcohol. That's it. It's like, okay, you want to get better? You need to stop drinking. You need to have complete abstinence and then do the rest of the steps, and that's what's going to get you better. Because, like I say all the time, it's our drinking. The thinking is the problem, not the drinking. Go ahead.
Much more important demonstration, beginning. A much more important demonstration of our principles lies before us in our respected homes, occupations, and affairs. All of us spend much more of our spare time in the sort of effort which we are going to describe. A few are fortunate enough to be situated that they can give nearly all their time to the work. If we keep on the way we're going, there's little doubt that much good will result, but the surface of the problem would hardly be scratched. Those of us who live in large cities are overcome by the reflection that close by hundreds are dropping into oblivion every day. Many could recover that if they had the opportunity we have enjoyed. How then shall we present that which has been so freely given to us? We have concluded to publish an anonymous volume setting forth the problem as we see it. We shall bring the task to our combined experience and knowledge. This should suggest a useful program for anyone concerned with a drinking problem. Of necessity, there will have to be discussion of the matters medical, psychiatric, social, and religious. We are aware of these matters are, from their very nature, controversial. Nothing would please us so much as to write a book which would contain no basis for the contention or argument. We shall do our utmost to achieve that ideal. Most of us sense that real tolerance of the people's shortcomings and viewpoints and the respect for their opinions are attitudes which make us.
So what did it say right there? It said we like to write a book. Like, we're going to talk about religion. We're going to talk about spiritual stuff. We're going to talk about mental health. We're going to talk about this. And it's going to be controversial. Why? Because everybody has their own opinions on that type of stuff, right? And they say, why would we like to write a book that would cause no controversy? Because they don't want people like us looking for every reason to be like, that's bullshit. Do you
At the point
understand?
the finger at it.
Yeah, and say, oh man, this can't, no, this is bullshit, that's bullshit. No. Because listen, that's what we do. I mean, anybody in here like me, like, especially in my addiction, I can be very negative and judgmental. I think I know everything. Oh, that's bullshit. That ain't good. You know what I mean? Like, I swear to God, one time I was like, man, yoga, that's bullshit. That's what I said. Never tried it, never did it. Millions of people do it throughout the world. And I'm saying it's bullshit, never even did it. Good.
More useful to others. Our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depend upon our constant thought of others and how we may help meet their needs. And everybody, can you hear me? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. You may have already asked yourself why is that all of us become so very ill from drinking. Doubtless you are curious to discover how and why, in the face of expert opinion to the contrary, we have recovered from hopeless condition of mind and body. If you are an alcoholic who wants to get over it, you may already be asking, what do I have to do? It is the purpose of this book is to answer such questions specifically. We shall tell you that we have done. Before going into detailed discussion, it may be well to summarize some points as we see them. How many times people have said to us, I can take it or leave it alone. Why can't he? Why don't you drink with like a gentleman or quit? That fellow can't handle his liquor. Why don't you try beer and wine? Lay off the hard stuff. His willpower must be weak. He could stop if he wanted to. She's such a sweet girl. I should think he'd stop for her sake. The doctor told him that if he were ever to drink again, it would kill him.
Hey, did most of us fall into one of those statements right there? If not all of them, but one of them. I mean, how many people in here have been told by a doctor, man, you need to stop. You need to stop. And then you go right back out and do it. Good.
But there he is all lit up again. Now there is a commonplace of observations on drinkers, which we hear all the time. Back of them is the word of ignorance and misunderstanding. We see that these expressions refer to the people whose reactions are very different from ours. Moderate drinkers have little trouble in giving up liquor entirely if they have a good reason for it. They can take it or leave it alone. Then we have a certain type of a hard drinker. He may have the habit badly enough to gradually impair him physically and mentally. It may cause him to die a few years before his time. If a sufficiently strong reason, ill health, falling in love, change of environment, or a warning of a doctor becomes operative, this man can stop or moderate, although he may find it difficult and troublesome and may even need medical attention. But what about the real alcoholic?
All right. So they're gonna, in this book, they refer to it as a real alcoholic, or the alcoholic of the hopeless variety. Sometimes your sponsor might ask you what the definition of the real alcoholic. I'm gonna tell you. It is somebody who cannot not drink. That doesn't mean you cannot not drink for a day, a week, a month, or a year. Do you understand what I'm saying? But somebody who, no matter how bad they don't want to, eventually, for whatever reason, goes back to drinking or getting high. Do you understand what I'm saying? And that is, I can't qualify you, but that was me. And for a long time, I didn't think it was me. You know why? Because I'd go to treatment, I'd get 6 months, I'd go back to treatment, they'd say, Mike, what happened? I'd say, I don't know, I was doing fine. See, I thought 6 months was a long time. I thought 6 months was a big deal. But the truth is, 6 months is nothing if your goal is to stop forever. Do you understand what I'm saying? But I couldn't see it because, to me, a drug addict was somebody that did drugs every day and couldn't stop ever. Do you understand what I'm saying? So here I am, I would stop, and there were plenty of times where I detoxed on the streets and stopped for months at a time. But when I actually looked at it, when I started doing the steps, and I was sober for 4 or 5 months, and I started doing the steps, I said, from the day I started getting high to right now, yeah, there were times where I would stop and do this, and especially when I started doing with the painkillers or the heroin, I really needed to wind, for the most part, going away someplace, because if I had any type of freedom, I'd go out and get high. But I always wind up getting high again. And here's the thing, I would get high even though I really didn't want to. At the time when I got high, I thought I wanted to, and then I would get high and I'd say, what the fuck is wrong with you, you piece of shit, you can't stay sober. Like, you're gonna lose everything and fuck everything up, and you've just told everybody for the 9,000th time that you were done forever, and then you did it again. So when it says the real alcoholic, it's somebody who cannot not drink. Good.
But what about the real alcoholic? He may start off as a moderate drinker. He may or may not become a continuous hard drinker. But at some stage of his drinking career, he begins to lose all control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. Here is the fellow who has been puzzling you, especially in the lack of control. He does absurd and incredible, tragic things while drinking. He is a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He is seldom mildly intoxicated. He is always more or less insanely drunk. His disposition while drinking resembles his normal nature, but little. He may be one of the finest fellows in the world, yet let him drink for a day and he frequently becomes disgustingly and even dangerously antisocial.
Guys, is that every one of us in here? I know it was me. I know it was me. And I love where it says dangerously antisocial, because how many of us get pretty aggressive when we're, you know what I mean? Like, ready. Yeah, I mean, listen, here's the whole thing. For me, I'm just talking about me. Did I get like that every time I got high or drank? No. But when I was like, I never look for a fight when I'm sober. I wouldn't back down from one, but you know what I mean? I never, but when I'm like running around and my headlights are on and I'm just like, you know, next thing you know, like, I can't wait to do, you know what I mean? Like, so when it says dangerously antisocial, yeah, it's dangerous for myself, it's dangerous for other people, like, and that never happens if I'm not completely out of my mind. Good.
Or doing dumb shit like getting drunk and driving your buggy across the creek and
Well,
breaking shit.
how is that not dangerously antisocial? Is that a socially acceptable way to live life?
No.
And is
No.
that not dangerous?
You could hurt somebody.
I mean, yourself,
Yeah.
somebody else, you know, a goddamn dog or something. You know what I mean? Like, the stuff we do. But I love how it says that dangerously antisocial, because if you really break down all the different scenarios, all this, that's all of us. The stuff we do is not socially acceptable behavior. Yeah, maybe if we're hanging out with other people that are doing, like, but it's still, it's not what, you know, a father or a brother or a son or just a respectable member of society, that's not what they do. But we do that on a regular basis. Go ahead.
He is a positive genius for getting tight at exactly the wrong moment, particularly when some important decision must be made or engagement kept.
Okay, so do you guys understand what they mean by that? How many of us in here have fucked up a wedding, a funeral, or the holidays? I mean, how many of us, like, for some reason, we can kind of keep it together, but here come the holidays when we should be, and we're like, wasted beyond belief. Like, people, everybody, all families looking at us like, this again? You know what I mean? Like, some important engagement we kept. Yeah, the holiday, you know, family dinners, or this or that. Or how many people in here have been the drunk guy at the wedding?
The guilt that comes with that is fucking
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's guilt and for real, shame and embarrassment, right? Because not only did you embarrass yourself, but you embarrassed your family. You know what I mean? And why? Just because you wanted to have a good time. Good.
He is often perfectly sensible and well-balanced concerning everything except liquor, but in that respect, he is incredibly dishonest and selfish. He often possesses special abilities, skills, and aptitudes, and has a promising career ahead of him. He uses his gifts to build up a bright outlook for his family and himself, and then he pulls the structure down on his head by the senseless series of sprees. He's basically self-sabotaging everything
Yeah, well,
himself.
listen, I had a counsel one time. I was going to an outpatient. And she'd be like, Mike, you're a self-sabotager. And I'm like, not me. This guy looks out for this guy. Well, how come every time you get 3, 4, 5 months of sobriety? Because listen, you know how long that is? 3 or 4 or 5 months. If you're a daily drug user like me, that's just enough time, especially around 6 months, just enough time for everybody to go, "Whew, I think he's got it this time. He's doing good. He looks good. He's got his weight back. He's doing good." You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then I start using again, and then I start the whole cycle over again, and everybody's like, you know, throwing their hands up going, not this again. You know what I mean? Fucking up money, fucking up this, lying to everybody. I mean, I did it so many times. I look back at my pattern now, and I can't believe I fell in the same goddamn hole over and over and over, but that's what that book's describing right there. Good.
He is the fellow who goes to bed so intoxicated he ought to sleep the clock around, yet early next morning he searches madly for the bottle he misplaced the night before.
And why is he looking?
Is he waking up
He's
and
sick.
Detox.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like they're like, man, he drank so damn much, he should be sleeping it off for 2 days. But a few hours later, it's you know, because that's really what it is. Like, you know, it's alcohol withdrawal. Like that's what your body's like. I need more of that. Yeah. Good.
If he can afford it, he may have liquor concealed all over the house to be certain no one gets his entire supply away from him to throw down the waste pipe, garbage or something.
Yeah.
As matters grow worse, he begins to use a combination of high-powered sedative and liquor to quiet his nerves so he can go to work. Then comes the day when he simply cannot make it, and gets drunk all over again. Perhaps he goes to a doctor who gives him morphine or some sedative with which to taper off. And then he begins to appear at hospitals and sanitariums. This is by no means a comprehensive picture of the true alcoholic, as our behavior patterns vary, but this description should identify him roughly. Why does he behave like this? If hundreds of experiences have shown him that one drink means another debacle with the attendant suffering and humiliation, why is it he takes that one drink? Why can't he stay on the water wagon? What has become of the common sense and his willpower that he still has sometimes displays with respect to other matters? Perhaps there never will be a full answer to these questions. Opinions vary considerably as to why the alcoholic reacts differently for normal people. We are not sure why. Once a certain point is reached, little can be done for him.
All right, so you know what they're talking about right there? Because they didn't have the science behind it. But remember how Amy was talking about it and how I was saying, like, and here's the thing. It kind of takes a while with alcohol to change that brain chemistry of yours. Do you understand what I'm saying? You ever hear them say, like, once you're a pickle, you can never be a cucumber? Like, that's what they're talking about. And with the alcohol, like, who in here did actually drink almost every day or 5 days a week, but still didn't have the detoxes in the mornings for a while? Yeah, it takes, but here's the thing. Once you start getting the detoxes, it never, now, with us hard drug users, especially opiates and whatever, real quick, we're, brain chemistry's changed and we're effed. Do you understand what I'm saying? But anybody in here, who in here has experienced some type of alcohol detox the next day? The tremors, the shakes, the seizures, or whatever. Yeah, once you start drinking, it kicks it right back in.
No, there's the hangovers,
Yeah.
completely shuts me down.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not like
I'm vomiting, I'm
Yeah.
sweating, I'm shaking, I'm trying to do something the next day and I'm like this.
Yeah.
People look at me like, what the fuck is
Yeah.
wrong with
I
you?
used to work with this guy in New York who was like that, and everybody knew, and I'd be like, why not just fucking have a drink? Like, why do you wait all day? Every single day he was like that, and as soon as he got off work, he'd start drinking, and that's some of the stuff that we do. Like, well, I'll never drink at work, so I can't be an alcoholic. You know what I mean? Like, that's some of the stuff we do. But in my mind, I'm like, man, fuck that. Put something in your orange juice or your coffee just to settle that shit down. But he also probably knows that it wouldn't just be
no. You can't do that. I would know the next morning. It was like as shaky and bad as I was. I'd be like, I can't, because I have one in another 2 hours.
Yeah.
I'm gonna want another one.
Yeah. Okay.
We know that while the alcoholic keeps away from the drink, as he may do for months or years, he reacts much like other men. We are equally positive that once he takes any alcohol, whatever, into his system, something happens both in the bodily and mentally sense, which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop. The experience of any alcoholic will abundantly confirm this. These observations would be academic and pointless.
What it's about to say is the shit that I say to you all the time, but really listen to this, because it's gonna say, it's the crux of the problem. What's the crux of the problem?
Is that the solution?
Watch, go ahead, watch.
Okay.
Let him.
There's crazy words in this. Shit.
Do you want RJ to pick up?
No, we're
Okay.
good. If our friend never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than his body. If you ask him why he started on that last bender, the chances are that he will offer you any one of 100 alibis. Sometimes these excuses have a certain plausibility, but none of them really actually make sense in the light of the havoc that the alcoholic's drinking bout creates. They sound like the philosophy of the man who, having a headache, beats himself on the head with a hammer so that he can't feel the ache. If you draw this fallacious reasoning to the attention of the alcoholic, he will laugh it off or become irritated and refuse to talk. Once in a while, he may tell you the truth, and the truth, strange to say, is usually that no more idea why he took that first drink than you have. I don't understand some of this.
Basically, it's saying he don't have.
He doesn't have an idea either.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't know why he drank, and he doesn't know why.
And like I said,
he may come up
can
with
give you-
excuses.
yeah, he can-
but he doesn't know.
My wife yelled at me, or my wife was accusing me of drinking. So I'm like, well, if you're going to accuse me of drinking, I might as well
Then I
drink.
might as well do it.
But when you look back on it, you say that is the most ridiculous.
Yeah, it doesn't make any
reason.
sense at all.
Yeah, but that's the stuff we do. Go ahead.
Awesome, thank you. Some drinkers have excuses with which they are satisfied part of the time, but in their hearts, they really do not know why they do it. Once this malady has a real hold, they are baffled a lot. There is the obsession that somehow, someday, they will beat the game, but they often suspect they're down for the count. How true is this? If you realize, in a vague way, their families and friends sense that their drinkers are abnormal, but everybody hopefully awaits the day when the sufferer will rouse himself from the lethargy and assert his power of will. The tragic truth is that if the man be a real alcoholic, the happy day may not arrive. He has lost control. At a certain point...
And what did that just say? They called him the real alcoholic, and then he just said he has lost control, which is another way to say that he's what?
Powerless.
Powerless. And that, listen, if you guys don't know, that is a really hard thing for a human being to actually admit. Oh, I'm powerless. I can't control myself. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, oh, you know, that is a really hard thing for us to like really just internalize. I know for me, it was, that's why I say for me, once I did a real step one, I was ready to do the other steps. Once I realized that I really am completely powerless over this shit, whether it's whatever, and that the only way I was ever going to be able, maybe to be unpowerless was to work the steps. I started working the steps even though I didn't think it was going to work, but there might be a chance it works, so let me try it. Go ahead.
At a certain point in the drinking of every alcoholic, he passes into a state where most powerful desire to stop drinking is absolutely no avail. The tragic situation has already arrived in practically every case long before it is suspected.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
The fact that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have the power of choice in the drink, our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with a sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of every week or a month ago.
Anybody in here fall for that? Anybody in here like get arrested or some other shit, and like at that time, like the pain and the humiliation and the suffering, even if it's just a terrible hangover, going, never again, never again. And then a couple of days, weeks, and months goes by, you don't remember that shit. When we want to have a drink, guess what we remember?
It's like you're a rabid pit bull. Just-
Well, we remember the good times,
Yeah.
right? We remember all the relief we got from it. We don't remember. That's how our brain works. We don't remember, like I was saying, why is the denial so thick? The denial is so thick because it's like we put the consequences and the negative shit over here, and all we do is look at the good stuff and our wins. We start saying shit like this, right, Brent?
I got this.
I pay the bills. I do it. I deserve it. Why not? Even though it's a big part of us knows it's destroying everything and messing everything up. But when we want that drink, oh man, we can't think of a reason not to have it. We can't think, and then we drink and we're like, what are we gonna do
Or you
now?
just say fuck it.
Or you say fuck it. Yeah, we do say fuck it. Go ahead.
We are without defense against the first drink. The almost certain consequences that follow taking even a glass of beer do not crowd into the mind to deter us. If these thoughts occur, they are hazy and readily supplanted with the old threadbare idea that this time we shall handle ourselves like other people. There is a complete failure of the kind of defense that keeps one of us putting his hand on the hot stove.
And listen, you know what it's saying? Like when it talks about the hot stove thing, you ever, would you purposely put your hand above a flame? No, because we've all been burnt before and we're not trying to do that shit again. Let me ask you this. If 1/10 of the consequences and pain that you experienced because of drinking or alcohol, if that shit happened to you because you ate a Big Mac, would you ever eat at McDonald's again?
No.
No, for real. But when it comes to this, it'll be different this time. Go ahead.
The alcoholic may say to himself in the most casual way, "It won't burn me this time, so here's how." Or perhaps he doesn't think at all. How often have some of us begun to drink in this nonchalant way, and after the third or fourth, pounded on the bar and said to ourselves, "For God's sake, how did I ever get started again?" Only to have the thought supplanted by I'll stop with the sixth drink, or what's the use anyhow?
Yeah, might as well get right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I fucked up, might as well get right.
When this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid and...
Well, listen, when it says that, he has placed himself beyond human aid, what are they talking about, Brent?
That no human can free him from his
And what human are they
alcoholism.
talking about, though?
Well, himself.
That's it, himself, because nobody's going to try to keep him sober more than himself. They're not talking about Dr. Phil or something else. You know what I mean? You've placed yourself beyond human aid, which means you can't do it. You will not be able to do it because, like we keep saying all the time, I say all the time, right? If we could do it, if I could do it, I'd have never met any of you fine people. And I tried. Same with you, right? Nobody comes into treatment just because whatever. No, we're like, how many times when people, our family, friends, work, whatever, they're like, man, maybe it's getting out of control. You're like, all right, man, all right. How many times have we said this? I'll be good.
Oh,
I'll be good. I'll be good. You know what I mean? Not knowing that we're sick. We're not bad.
My wife looking at me, be good today.
But that's it, and it's not good or bad. It's sick.
Yeah.
But we don't know that. Go ahead.
And unless locked up, may die or go permanently insane. These stark and ugly facts have been confirmed by legions of alcoholics throughout history. But by the grace of God, there have been thousands more convincing demonstrations. So many want to stop but cannot. There is a solution. Almost none of us like this.
Listen what it's about to say, because this is what it takes. And listen, and ask yourself, would you like to have to, go ahead. None of us.
Like the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of our shortcomings, which the process requires for its successful consummation.
Anybody in here like to have their pride leveled?
No.
Because it usually comes with a little bit of embarrassment or, you know what I mean? Nobody likes that, but what does that build?
Self-esteem.
Well,
Humility.
Right? When we have our pride level, when someone comes in, anybody in here ever have something like that where somebody that you love or whatever, they kind of slap you in the face with some truth And you're like,
Oh,
oh shit.
tough
At first,
love,
tough love,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
At first, we're like, man, fuck that, asshole, whatever. And then if we're actually smart, where it says the self-searching right there, we actually start looking at it and they're like, you know what? They're right. I mean, that's really what it is. That's the way that, like, that mirror kind of gets put right in front of you, or that, like, you start chipping away at that denial. Good.
But we saw that it's really worked in others, and we had to come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. When therefore we were approached by those by those whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up that simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. We have found much more of heaven, and we have been rocketed into the fourth dimension of the existence of which we had not been even dreamed. The great fact is that just this, and nothing less, that we have had the deep and effective spiritual experiences which have been revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and toward God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in the way which is intended miraculous.
All right, mark that spot. We're gonna pick that up after, but I want to explain to exactly what they were talking about. Being rocketed into the fourth dimension. Sounds crazy, right? Sounds crazy. But that's actually being able to be present and to have God in your life and to be following your conscience. What do I tell you guys all the time about how, like, if we were all, Chevy Tahoes and we all got the owner's manual, the blueprint to how to live life was already put in your DNA, in your brain. And the way you were living, it's going against that blueprint in your DNA, and that's where we get all the conflict, and that's why when I tell you, like, I got clean, I got sober, I worked the steps, and I am now the person that God wanted me to be, or the person I was always supposed to be, not the person that I decided to be, not the person that I thought you guys wanted me to be. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like this fake facade, whatever. Like, really, that's why I say, like, I know what I'm put on earth for, which means I know what I was created for. That's when it says, find what you were created for, because here's the thing, none of us were put on earth to drink or get high the way we were getting high. And it was causing, listen, anybody in here not have that internal conflict that goes on in their head?
Like the obsession?
No, the conflict. Like, you're drinking, you're getting high, but you know you're not supposed to.
Yeah.
There's a voice going, come on, Kyle, you're better than this. You know you're not supposed to be doing this, but we don't know any other way.
Yep.
We know, like, all we want to do is stop and be good, but, like, we keep being bad and messing things up. Like, it's that conflict, that tug of war that's going on. That's why it says, like, I know what I was put on earth for. I was put on earth to teach, love, reach, help people. The most important gift God ever gave us was each other, and every single one of us is put here. I mean, there was a guy here that sometimes used to kind of, man, I don't know, and he was a football coach, right? And I would ask him, I'm like, when do you feel like you are doing what you were put on earth to do? He's like, oh man, when I'm coaching with those kids. You know what I mean? And I'm like, you don't think that's a deep and effective spiritual experience? It feeds your spirit when you're out there teaching those kids. You know what I mean? Like, you're teaching these kids a skill. But not only that, you're giving them self-esteem, and it's fun. And you know what I mean? It's like almost pure. How pure is it to sit in the bathroom and slam meth?
No.
Or hide liquor all around the house and lie to everybody about it and do it and drink and drive. Like, this shit is eating up your conscience. Like, you need to align yourself with your conscience, which that's who I always, like, when they told me, like, Mike, you need to have a relationship with your higher power. I'm like, that makes no sense. I can only have a relationship with someone I talk to. But then I realized I've been talking to myself my whole life, right? See, I always thought there was a good Mike on one shoulder and a bad Mike. And then I kind of got humbled and realized that my conscience, that one that was telling me to do the right thing, that's what I call God. Mike, he lives in here in my lower nature, and he wants to do what he wants to do, when he wants to do it, and he doesn't want to hear it from nobody. But at the same time, when he's living like that, he really does feel, like what you were saying before, guilty and shameful and remorseful. And I've got that tug of war going on inside my head.
Yeah.
Because that next drink will get rid of all that shame and guilt. And
For what? How long though?
I don't know, but we're
30
doing it
minutes.
anyway.
5 minutes, if that, you know what I mean? And here's the thing, the longer the alcoholism or the addiction progresses, the less relief you get from it. You really will get to the point where there's no relief. That's what happened with me.
Yeah.
I was more, here's the fucked up point, I was more miserable getting high than when I wasn't getting high. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, this shit turned me. Because now I don't get the relief from it. Now I don't get anything from it. I want to kill myself whether I'm getting high or not.
Yeah.
What the fuck do I do now? And then they're telling me I could be happy being sober, which made zero sense to me because I've been sober before, my guy, and I've never been happy. So what are you saying?
Yeah.
Work the steps. Well, you sound crazy. What's that going to do? Like, see, listen, I see some people come into AA. They buy into it immediately. They're like, oh, really? Okay, I'm going to do it. That wasn't me. You told me it worked for you? All right, cool, it'll work for you. It probably won't work for me. Because like I said, I've been this way my whole entire life. You're telling me I could be happy and free and rocketed into the fourth dimension or whatever the fuck this shit talks about makes zero sense to me. Zero, zero, zero. But what happened to me is I got so broken and beat and hopeless that I was willing to try anything. Even, just maybe, it could work. I wasn't in Rosenberg going to meetings twice a day and doing all this other stuff like, man, this is going to be great, this is going to work. I was in there talking about at meetings going, you know what? If this shit don't work soon, I'm going back to New York, I'm just going to ride this shit out. And that's really where I was at, you know what I mean? Because I am the type of person that no matter how while I'm using, I could want to kill myself because I hate it and I'm miserable. But then when I'm sober, the further away from I get to it, I start remembering the good things. And I start saying, you know what, man, just a little will make me feel better. You know what I mean? Or I got to the point where, they say insanity, doing the same thing over, expecting a different result. I knew when I used, I'd wind up strung out and having to go to treatment. But it was either use or jump off a bridge or kill somebody. And it was like, well, at least if I use, I live to fight another day and I could figure out later. You know what I mean? Like being in that much pain. Because man, that's what this whole thing for me was pain. I've been in pain my whole life. I've been in fear, I've been in anxiety, I've been nervous, I've been uncomfortable my whole entire life, and all I've ever been doing is to feel comfortable. And now I've never felt so comfortable. Now I've never felt like these spiritual experiences that we've had deep, you just read it, we've had deep and effective spiritual experiences. I have that shit doing groups with you guys sometimes. Having conversations with you on the side because I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Not like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing no, what I mean is I'm here to help people, I'm here to love people, I'm here to teach people, I'm here to reach people. When I'm doing that, I feel good. When I'm doing that other shit, lying, cheating, stealing, hustling, doing all this shit, I don't feel good about myself, I hate myself, and I'm miserable. And it's so crazy because we are hardwired to do the right thing. I always make this analogy. I get kidney stones sometimes. If I got a kidney stone right now and drop down to my knees, not one of yous would hesitate to help me and get me to the nurse, right? Not one of you. It would just be built. It's just right. Like, oh, we just do the right. It is hardwired for us to do the right thing. Is it not true that any time you've ever done the wrong thing, you've had to justify it, rationalize it, and give yourself a good reason to do it?
Yeah.
And it's never really a good reason, right? Like RJ, because anything we rationalize or justify, we wind up feeling guilty for, or shameful, or remorseful. We try to stuff it down, and you cannot stuff shit down. Like Amy was talking about today, about how most of us aren't taught good, healthy coping skills. We're not dealing with trauma. We're not dealing with pain. We're not doing this. We are stuffing everything down, especially as men, right? Because what do they tell men? Man up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Stop being a baby. Don't
Grow
worry.
some balls.
Grow some balls. Really, it's and that's just, emotions and pain and trauma, that shit is powerful stuff. So you either deal with that shit or it just deals with you in another way. That's all there is to it. That's all there is to it. All right, guys, we'll finish this up after dinner. Thank you for reading, and, thank you.
The second paragraph in between miraculous and key.
All right, so it's part 2 of There is a Solution. Here's the crazy part about this book. It looks like it might be a regular book, like it was a novel or something like that, but it's really like an instruction manual or like a textbook.
Mm-hmm.
And first, the doctor's opinion says, hey, this thing might be a disease or an illness, which it is. And then Bill tells his story, and he shows you that he's a real alcoholic, and that this worked for him. And now he's just telling you that there is a solution. Like there's a solution. If you want, here's the whole thing. It says it somewhere in the book too. It might be in this chapter or chapter 3. We're assuming the reader wants to be sober. That doesn't say we're assuming the reader has to get sober. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Did Bill write the book?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you understand the difference with what I'm saying? Of having to be sober and wanting to be sober? Do you understand?
Yeah.
There's a difference. A lot of us come in here because we know we have to be sober, or we should be sober, or we need to get sober. How many of us come in here wanting to be sober? Well, good for you, Brent, because not Mike. You know why? Because all I ever did was associate sober with miserable. So I didn't want to be sober. I wanted to stop fucking shit up and get high, but I didn't want to be sober. I didn't know sober could actually be good. All right, go ahead, Kyle.
All right. He has commenced to accomplish those things for which of us we could never do by ourselves. If you are as serious alcoholic as we are, we believe that there is no middle of the road solution. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible, and if we had passed into the region from which there is a no return through human aid, we had but two alternatives. One was to go on the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best as we could, and the other to accept spiritual help. This we did because we honestly wanted to and were willing to make the effort. A certain American businessman had ability, good sense, and a high character. For the years he had floundered from one sanitarium to another. He had consulted the best-known American psychiatrists. Then he had gone to Europe, placing himself in the care of the celebrated psychiatrist Dr. Jung, who prescribed for him. Though the experience had made him skeptical, he finished the treatment and with unusual confidence. His physical and mental condition were unusually good. Above all, he believed he had acquired such a profound knowledge of the inner workings of his and hidden springs that relapse was unthinkable.
All right, so what do you think they're talking about when they say the inner workings of the mind or the hidden springs? What do you think they're talking about?
He knows he's lying to himself.
Exactly. Because isn't that the thing I talk about all the time, that we'll lie to ourselves and we won't know we're lying to ourselves, which is messed up because you don't know it's a lie at the time and then you look back on it. That's what they're talking about. They explain to him, they're like, all right, every time you relapse, isn't it because you're just going to have one? Or nobody will find out? Or I deserve, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And all of us usually relapse because we're going to control it, we're going to figure it out, we're just going to have a little. But if we really look at our history of drinking and drug use and stuff, it's never a little.
No.
So they explain that to him, so he's like, I'm not gonna fall for it, right? Like, because that really is, if you actually look at it and you see a pattern, you're like, okay, I'm just not gonna repeat that pattern. The whole thing is, and they also call it the peculiar mental blank spot or the subtle insanity before the first drink. You don't know you're in it when you're in it. That's why they call it the blank spot.
Yeah.
You don't know you're in it when you're in it. And that should scare you, to humble you a little bit, if you believe that you. Go ahead.
Nevertheless, he was drunk in a short time. More baffling still, he could give himself no satisfactory explanation for this fall. So he returned to the doctor, whom he admired, and asked him point blankly why he could not recover. He wished above all things to regain self-control. He seemed quite rational and well-balanced with respect to other problems. Yet he had no control whatever over alcohol. Why was this? He begged the doctor to tell him the whole truth, and he got it. In the doctor's judgment, he was utterly hopeless. He could never gain his position in society, and he would have to place himself under lock and key or to hire a bodyguard if he expected to live long. That was the great physician's opinion.
So what did the doctor just tell him?
Told him that he's fucked, basically.
Oh, yeah, you're hopeless. Like, you might as well lock yourself away. And this is a doctor telling you that.
Bless you. At the same time.
You guys sneeze at the same damn time?
Yeah.
I just thought Chris had a crazy, powerful, messed up sneeze.
Yeah, like he did something.
Right? Like, I looked at Chris, I'm like, but I didn't know it was both of you at the same time. All right, go ahead.
But this man still lives and is a free man. He does not need a bodyguard, nor is he confined. He can go anywhere on the earth where the other free men may go without disaster, provided he remains willing to maintain a certain simple attitude. Some of our alcoholic readers may think that they can do without spiritual help. Let us tell you the rest of the conversation our friend had with his doctor. The doctor said, "You have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. I have never seen over one single case recover where that state of mind existed to the extent that does in you." Our friend felt as though the gates of hell had closed on him with a clang. He said to the doctor, "Is there no exception?" "Yes," replied the doctor, "there is. Exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. To me, these occurrences are a phenomenon. What's that word, Mike?
Phenomenon.
Okay. They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes which were once the guiding forces of our lives, these men are suddenly cast to one side."
Okay, so you hear what they just said. Sudden upheavals and rearrangements. This is what they're talking about. You'll go from no longer be able to picture your life without alcohol to no longer be able to picture with drugs or alcohol. Is that not a complete perspective shift or a complete 180?
Yeah.
That's what they're talking about. That's what can happen for you. That's the psychic change they're talking about. Go ahead.
And a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. In fact, I have been trying to produce some such emotional rearrangement within you. With many individuals, the methods which I employed are successful, but I have never been successful with an alcoholic of your description. Upon hearing this, our friend was somewhat relieved, for he reflected that, after all, he was a good church member. This hope, however, was destroyed by the doctor telling him that while his religious convictions were very good, in his case, they did not spell the necessary vital spiritual experience. Here was the terrible dilemma in which our friend found himself when he had the extraordinary experience, which, as we have already told you, made him a free man. We, in our turn, sought the same escape with all the desperation and drowning men.
All right, so do you hear what that says? You need to say that again.
We, in our turn, sought through the same escape with all desperation of drowning men.
Okay, what does that mean? If you're drowning, or this is what I like to say sometimes. You ever watch like a scary movie like
Fight for your life.
Yeah, well, you ever watch a scary movie like Halloween or Jason or this and that, and they're chasing the person that they're trying to kill, usually a white lady, right? Is she stopping? When she is running for her life, is she stopping to check what she looks like in the mirror, or is she trying to figure out what she's, no, right? Like she's trying to save her life.
She falls a couple times.
She does. But my point, I'm looking about the effort, not the follow through, right? No, you're right, but do you understand what I'm saying? Like, it says that if you have this disease of alcoholism, you need to approach it in a way and grasp it with the desperation of a drowning person, because that's what you are. You are drowning, and that's the whole thing. You could say, well, I'm just an alcoholic. Mike, you're a heroin addict. All right, so if I'm drowning the way I do drugs, if I'm drowning a little faster than you. No doubt, I won't lie to that. Like, I won't argue that. But drowning is still drowning, which means it's only a matter of time before you go under. Now, maybe you don't believe that shit. Maybe you look at, we start looking around the room, or we start looking at other people, and we start, man, I'm not as bad as him, I'm not as bad as her, But let's really look at the facts. People don't wind up in treatment because things are going okay. People don't wind up messing up relationships. People don't go to jail. They don't catch cases. They don't cost all this money. Like, seriously, let's really, really understand that we're drowning. We're drowning, which means you need to do everything you can to not drown. Do not think that you're just gonna, listen, do not think that when you leave here, you're just gonna decide not to drink or get high. That might work for a little bit. The willpower might hold on for a little bit. But you cannot change the way you act unless you change the way you think. And if you don't change, do you understand? And because the only way to change the way you think is to act your way into right thinking. So what does that say? That says you got to start doing things differently.
Will you hit that stick?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
What seemed at first a flimsy reed has proved to be the loving and powerful hand of God. A new life has been given to us, if you prefer, a design for living.
Yeah, what are you doing?
a design for living that really works. The distinguished American psychologist William James, in his book, Varieties of Religious Experience, indicates a multitude of ways in which men have discovered God. We have no desire to convince anyone that there is only one way by which faith can be acquired. If what we have learned and felt and seen means anything at all, it seems that all of us, whatever our race, creed, or color, are the children of the living Creator with whom we may form a relationship upon simple and understandable terms as soon as we are willing and honest enough to try. Those having religious affiliations will find here nothing disturbing to their beliefs or ceremonies. There is no friction among us over such matters. We think no concern of ours what religious bodies our members identify themselves with as individuals. This should be an entirely personal affair which one decides for himself in the light of the past associations or his present choice. Not all of us join religious bodies, but most of us favor such memberships. In the following chapter, there appears an explanation of alcoholism as we understood it, then a chapter addressed to the agnostic. Many who once were in these classes are now among our members. Surprisingly enough, we find such convictions no great obstacle to a spiritual experience. Further on, a clear-cut directions are given showing how we recovered. These are followed by 42 personal experiences. Each individual in the personal stories describes its own language and form of his own point of view, the way he established his relationship with God. These give a fair cross-section to our membership and clear-cut idea of what has actually happened in their lives. We hope no one will consider these self-revealing accounts in bad taste. Our hope is that many alcoholic men and women desperately in need will see these pages, and we believe that it is only by full disclosing ourselves and our problems that we will be persuaded to say, yes, I am one of them too. I must have this thing.
Thank you for reading.
Mm-hmm.
So getting back to what I was saying about us drowning, I'm going to give you one of my experiences or whatever, and then maybe just go around and if you want to share. So here's the thing. Last time I was in treatment, I was broken. My wife, my ex-wife, whatever, at the time, wife put me out and said, I can't do this, you're killing me. And I was on the phone with her, and if I wasn't crying, I was barely keeping it together. And I said, I would kill for you guys. And she said, I know, Michael. And I said, I would die for you guys. She said, I know, Michael. I said, but I don't know how to live for you. That's how bad this thing was. I was trying so hard to just be happy with the life I had. Go to work, take care of the kids, do this, do that. But I was in so much pain. I had so much stuff going on with past traumas and even just splitting with her and not being around the kids. Like, I was a broken human being. That's what drugs did to my life. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't all good. I wasn't able to come into treatment and look around and like, I was so broken, and that's all a direct result and consequences because of my drug use. So a lot of times we come in here, we still are putting that front on, and we're trying to let everybody, well, it's not really that bad, and it's not that, and it's not this. Like, every single one of us is on the Titanic right now, and that has hit an iceberg, and it is sinking. So to fool yourself into not thinking, to thinking it's not as bad as it really is, do that if you want, but that's just at your own peril. That's at your own peril. So does anybody else want to share, like what got them into treatment, or what was one of the things that they looked at and said, this is not how life's supposed to be. I need something better. Come on, somebody.
That's a good guy.
I'll talk.
All right, Brent.
So I've been in treatment before, and I told myself I was never going back. And I start, stop, couldn't stay stopped.
Yeah.
And my wife had it with me, my business partner had it with me. I was drinking in a parking lot of fucking Specs and throwing it away immediately so that I wouldn't get caught, and thought I was still fooling people, but I was sober for 2 years. And I knew, this is not working. This is not it. You got to give rehab another try, and you got to do it for the right reasons. Because I did it the first time. I did it to show them.
Well, not even that. Wasn't it getting back to what I was saying before? Even to show them, or even because you should. But did you want to be sober?
No.
Well, that's exactly it. Like, because here's the thing.
I knew I was going to drink again.
When we want something, how do we go after it?
Full
Do
bore.
we go with the desperation of a drowning?
Yeah.
Like, if we want a new car, if we want a boat, a vacation, or the girl, the guy, the job. If we want something, we go after it like we got purpose.
Mm-hmm.
If we're doing something because we have to, we're kind of, you know what I mean? Like, we're not really all into it. That's what I'm trying to say. We need to want this thing. And I know, maybe you're like me when I was sitting in your seat. Well, I don't want to be sober because I'm going to be miserable. Just try it. Just try it. Because we obviously realized life was miserable before we got here, right? Like, nobody came in here because life was great, but they were just spending a little too much money on it. You know what I mean? Like, that's not why we came in here. We came in here broken and looking like with a little bit of hope that there might be a better way. Chris, you said you want to shoot?
I was just saying I should already be dead, so.
Okay.
You asked why we.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should have died a few months ago, so. If you would have rolled the clock back mentally 50 years, I'd be dead.
Okay. Go ahead.
I know for me, it's two reasons why, within the last month that I said that I got a problem, I got issues, but I got 8 nephews and 6 nieces, and they all love me to death. And most of my nephews now are grown teenagers, but one of them called me one day, he checked on me, he was like, oh, this not you. Whatever you're doing, this ain't you. And that meant a lot for him to say that to me, but the last thing that happened to me is on June the 2nd or something like that. I was at the Doubletree Hotel with me and my girl that I've been together for 12 years, and we were drinking, and I was doing my coke, and I'm not much of a drinker, but I was on the coke, I was doing my coke, but it was like 11 o'clock at night, and we were drinking, we was on drugs. So we ended up getting into a verbal altercation or whatever, and by the end of the night, I was in jail for family violence and impeding circulation. But I didn't do nothing. I didn't touch her. It's not my thing. I've never in my life put my hands on a woman. But to bring all the back around, I was sitting in jail with a $60,000 bond. I had to bond out for $6,000. I'm on bond right now, and I'm sitting in jail just breathing like crap. But it all came back to on my nephew or something this is not you. And the reason for all of that happening that night was because I was fucking intoxicated.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He almost dies because of drugs. You're in jail because of drugs.
So
Your wife's about to leave you for drugs. This is not good. Yeah, we are drowning. Especially, listen, we are a lot closer to death than we think when we're using, because it's just one slip, one anything could happen. Especially us drug users, right? We're not in the best places. We're not. How many times drug deal gone bad or some other? You know what I'm saying? There's no guarantee that any of this shit goes right. And this is the stuff we're doing, chasing this shit. Let's be real, chasing the shit that's ruining us and making us miserable. If that's not a fucking sickness, I don't know what is. You know what I mean? Anybody else? Jody, come on, man.
It's terrible. Like I told you before I went out there.
You can't even face your wife right now.
No.
Yeah.
I talked to her early on the phone, and she brought me some extra clothes. She had the grandbabies in the car. I told you I'm not gonna walk out because I want to come up over there and talk with her. Yeah, I think this is gonna be a real big deal, real good way. touch that can of beer no more.
Mm.
And my wife is gonna help me get me a counselor and get me into AA.
Good man.
Between her and Amy over there, they're working.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, it was a bad experience. 53 years old. Steadily drinking for 38 years. Half of my life is gone. You know. There's several times like I went out there. Anybody pull out in front of me, I some damn slots. Keep on them and I can be in prison.
Oh, easy.
I wound up setting this up. Stop it.
Well, I got a conscience too, Mike. I think you was talking to someone about a conscience one day in the group.
Yeah.
I got tired of lying to that motherfucker, like, and then it becomes like, I'm glad that I haven't lost my conscience. Like,
Listen,
I was on the worst of losing it. The
Well-
conscience part of it.
maybe there comes a point where some people can go too far. I don't know. I know my conscience was kicking my ass my whole entire life. You know what I mean? Like, it really did. Like, and like I say all the time, it's always been like, I've never felt guilty, shitty, shameful, or remorseful when I follow my conscience. It's always when I have a great idea. You know what I'm saying? It's always when nobody's going to find out.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying? And then I'm like, why the fuck did I do? Why would you know what I mean? Like, who? And then I was like, who does that? And then I hit the self-pity. Why can't I be normal? What the fuck's wrong with me? You know, and then I'm like, beat myself up because my whole thing is this, like, you know, I just think I'm a realistic type of person. So if I'm a piece of shit, I'm just gonna call myself a piece of shit over and over and over. And then what good is that? Yeah. Anybody else? Yes, Kyle.
Well, you know, I never thought I would be here today. Honestly, you know, like it's my whole life. I've had like, I'm not using it as an excuse, but you know, I've had trauma and I've never dealt with it. So, you know, I always resorted to drinking, and then my drinking over the years escalated into drug use because I was so uncomfortable in my own skin and not dealing with my own personal problems, and it just turned into a shit storm of
It
how
just
it,
kept worse.
yeah, worse and worse, and I put anything in the, it's like what you got in your pockets. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, and the situation that I put myself in, you know, not sleeping for 4 or 5 days and thinking people were breaking into my house, you know, I was definitely on one, and you know, that could have went way south. You know, I could have, you know, who knows who could have came in that door.
Like I said, like if we just think about that one scenario, forget about the other stuff,
Yeah.
but if we think about that one scenario, that's serious type of stuff that could put you in jail for life or have you murder an innocent person. Like, that's crazy.
It is.
But it's exactly the type of stuff that comes along with this. And I like what you said about the pain, the trauma, not dealing with it, and then your addiction growing. First it's alcohol, then it's drugs. Like Kanye West said in a song one time, he goes, the plan was to drink until the pain over. But what's worse, the pain or the hangover? And he's talking about the hangover, like, what's worse, the pain or the drug addiction? You know what I mean? Because here it is, like, we're thinking that we're avoiding the pain and dodging the pain, and right? Like, that's what we think. And really, we're making it worse and worse. And then we got this wild drug addiction to drag, you know what I mean? Like, because here's the thing. The one thing that every single person in this room has in common is pain. Now, how you deal with that pain is going to set you up with how you deal with pain for the rest of your life. Do you understand what I'm saying? And it's like, it's crazy because we are really sensitive people, so it's like, when we do feel pain, it probably hurts worse than the average person. I mean, that's why I say it all the time, that's why drugs and alcohol feel so good to us. You know what I mean? Because we are sensitive. It's why, you know, things occur in us when we drink or do drugs that don't occur with other people. But it's like, here's the thing, the pain has actually never killed anybody. The running from the pain has killed people. You know what I mean? And the what don't kill you makes you stronger. That's a fact. When you deal with it in a sober and healthy way, you do get stronger from it. And then if you're able to help somebody else through it, like you vets, there's not a better reason to get better than to help other vets. You know what I mean? Listen, the biggest crime in this country, maybe besides what we do to the homeless, but it's what happens to vets. You know what I mean? You go, you do this, you come back, and it's like, all right, man, good luck.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And it's like, you know, so listen, can't count on the VA, you know what I mean? But we can count on you and you and you know what I mean? Because for real, we're responsible for each other. That's what a community is. You know, if we all could lean on, like if we are all each other's crutches, nobody can fall too far. Do you think you'll ever feel guilty, shitty, shameful, or remorseful for helping someone? Will you feel like that if you go out and drink or get high?
Yes.
Yep.
I mean, doesn't it seem elementary, right? Like, okay, don't do that, I'll do this. But goddamn, this thing is strong, and it's like we're programmed. We are, or brain chemistry, we're like programmed. You know, I mean, and that's the shit when you have to really look at this and say, I am drowning. Things are not good. I have a brain that is trying to kill me, and if I listen to that brain when I leave here, I'm fucked. Like seriously, let's really, really understand you're in a very, very serious situation. If you're lucky, you get to come back here. If you're lucky, you get to come back to treatment. You know what I mean? A lot of people don't get the opportunity. A lot of people die first. A lot of people, you know what I mean?
Or get locked up.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you know how many times, listen, I swear this is a 100% true story. My friend Carmine in New York, right? Even came down and visited. He's sober a year or two more than me, right? Came down, visited, spoke at a meeting, you know, it's my guy. He relapsed up in New York. I don't know how long ago, but he relapsed up in New York. He's driving his truck. He nodded out, went over the double yellow line, hit someone head on. They had to be, you know, almost died. They didn't die, almost died. He's had 5 DWIs, has no license at all. 100% he's going to jail. I don't know for how long, but 100% he's going to jail. He had 5 years sober at one point. What do you think jail's going to be like for him?
Miserable.
Man, I had this thing beat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I had this thing beat. Why didn't I keep doing, you know what I mean? Like, holy shit. And that's how serious this is. Like, he really, I mean, it's scary. It's scary. It's scary. If you want to let the denial, if you want to fool yourself, if you want to pretend you're not in the ring with Tyson and say it's not that big of a deal, I mean, the only people that make it, like, they go after this thing because they don't want to be back here. They don't want to, I mean, like I say all the time, like, don't you want to be the underdog? Like, don't you want everybody to look at you and be like, man, he fell, but when he got back up, he became a giant. You know what I mean? Brent, I don't know about you, but I don't want to, like, if I was you, and I don't want to be divorced twice and you know what I'm saying? Like, going through some shit, like, and everybody going, man, he's such a good guy, but he's got so much potential, but fuck that. Fuck that. Listen, you might not believe in yourself, but I wholeheartedly, 100% believe in every single person in here. You're worth it, you matter, the people out there matter. Like I said, you got 2 different people in your world. You got people praying for you to succeed, you got people praying for your downfall. Either way you want to succeed, right? you don't want to give those people praying for your downfall anything to
He's a
celebrate.
thumbs up with the middle finger.
Well, it's the best fuck you in the world.
Yeah.
You know, the one with the smile.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, exactly. Come on, man. Like, how much do you really, how much do you care about yourself? What used to be important is not important. What's important is you go out, you do the 12 steps, you become the person that God wanted you to be. Not the person that you decided to be or pretended to be or what thought other people wanted you to be. But you go out there and you live life the right way. You feel good about yourself and do good. You go, instead of sucking the life out of people, you go breathing life into people. What better purpose? All right, guys, we're good. Have a good day. Love you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Before everybody leaves,
Oh, yeah.
wrap up and we're going to do clean up.